YC founders of the past and present. Come on up, lead with your question, pitch, and then tell us about your company after that. We're doing a strict 4 minutes per discussion, but really it's an open forum for you to come on up and ask us a question, whether it's about the company that you're working on or because it's only a week before, we're only a couple of days before YC applications are due. We're also, anyone who wants to ask questions about the program, whether it's applications or what it's like to be in YC. Oh, Omar, I'm letting you up. What it's like to be in YC during these unprecedented times and how they've adapted. We're open to really any of those discussions. Please do not have an empty bio. That's the only caveat here. We don't bring up people who have no followers and no description. You can have no followers, but just have a description in your bio, just because a lot of people like to come up here and we want to be able to get everyone's questions in and want to avoid any trolls or anyone who just kind of seems like it's not a relevant thing for this room. With that said, let's open it on up. Morning, everyone. I'm just going to mod all of our people up here. And Alder, thanks again for hosting. Abdullah, how you doing? Happy Friday. Welcome to the Huddle. What is your question?
Thank you. First of all, I think YCombinator, I'm amazed by the fact that they are very, very selective with the companies that they invest in. So my question would be, what does YCombinator want to see from companies that they want to invest in?
I think you cut out at the end. What do they want to see? What?
Like, what do they want to see from the companies that they want to invest in? Like, how do they choose?
It's pretty open-ended question. I don't think that like in general YC is going to be which is fine, but
Aaron, I don't know about that.
Well, yeah, okay. Aaron,
they're searching for $1 billion companies. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
This is what I was going to say. It's open-ended in the sense of like the types of companies they're looking at in terms of industries, but there are a couple. So in that sense, it's wide. But what Aaron said is absolutely 100% on point. You can look at it through that lens in which it's very narrow what they're looking for, which is high growth potential companies that have a clear path to $100 million of ARR, which translates to $1 billion company, which translates to being a unicorn. That's sort of the math. And if anyone else has any thoughts on this.
Beyond just like the metrics of the company, they're searching for the right founders that are going to build those companies. Like they care way more about the people, obviously. I mean, if you notice that like part of the YC application, they're not forcing you to fill out all of your current metrics on your company or anything like that. I mean, if you have a demo, you can show it to them and all that kind of stuff, but they're largely basing their decisions off of, the founders. So I think in a lot of ways, beyond just the metrics of what kind of company you want to build, everybody wants to build $1 billion company. But yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Just I wanted to know I saw a lot of interviews about YC, and they are always against like single founders. They always want to for a company to have co-founders or two founders. Why is that?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. All right, put on your investor hat. Right now, you're an investor, and well, let me also dispel the fact that they are against solo founders, because they're not. It's just more challenging when you are a solo founder, right? Like I got into YC as a solo founder. But here, I'm going to give you a thought experiment. So you're an investor, right? And a solo founder comes to you. What's the biggest risk in investing in a solo founder? What do you think it is?
If you're not motivated, the company is like dead. Maybe.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily motivation. It's more the fact that, like, I mean, maybe it is. It could be, but yeah, you're relying on a single person, right? So if you have more than one co-founder, you're spreading the risk, right, across the founding team rather than just one person. Because if something happens to that one person, the whole company is gone. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, true, totally.
Also, startups are a lot of work, and one person really can't do all that work in general if you're really going to do a startup.
And yeah, beyond that, also, like, if it might not speak too well on your ability to sell your idea if you can't bring on a co-founder, right? Like, a co-founder in some ways is your first customer. So if you can't convince other people to join you in your journey, that also speaks to what kind of founder you are.
Damn, Aaron coming in with the heat today. I love that. Abdullah, thanks for the question, man. Thanks for being here. I hope that was useful.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Happy Friday. Have a great weekend, man. With that, I want to open up the stage, give Ray a chance to say what he's been up to. Because we have a lot of, I love that we have a lot of repeat customers in here, but some people don't know what you're all about, Ray.
All right, I will take the chance and bore you one more time. My name is Ray. I am building the long-term stock exchange. We are YC Summer 17. LTSC is my fourth startup. I founded my first startup when I was 21, started to work on Wall Street when I was 19, and wrote my first line of code when I was 8.
Nice. I love it. I love it. With that, we're going to be going on to Paul. Paul, happy Friday. Welcome to the Huddle. How can we help, and what is your question?
Hey man, yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm in YC 20, winner 21 as well. Just wondering what you guys are hoping to get out of demo day.
Paul, do you want to be a mod with us, by the way?
Yeah, sure, happy to.
All right. And
I think I joined you guys last time. It was good fun.
Yeah. Guys, well, that's us. That's the three of us here, Aaron, Omar, and I, and you. What we're trying to get out of demo day, trying to raise around. I don't know if there's much wiggle room here, but for us, we need to raise a successful round so we can hire people and move on to the next steps. But I think there'll be some differentiation there along the lines of whether you're a tech company or hard tech company. We're hard tech, probably more capital intensive, different, sales cycles. Omar, do you have any thoughts on this, or Aaron?
Sure. So we're still figuring out what we want out of demo day. So we're not hard tech, but a fintech. So we're always fundraising, but we're fundraising differently. So we're fundraising debt and equity all the time. So just figuring out what we're going with for demo day. Still have a week, right, to figure it out.
We got 10 days, right? No pressure.
Yeah.
Omar, maybe you want to speak about, so this is an interesting thing, which is kind of nerdy and I love, but maybe for the people in the room aren't familiar, why are you doing a mixture of both debt instruments and equity?
Sure. So I think, so for fintechs, generally the trend has historically been predominantly relying on equity, which was the easier way of doing it. Just because VCs were more accepting of doing equity versus debt. But now the pendulum has shifted slightly, and I think for the last few years, 3-4 years maybe, everyone has been being more accepting to debt. So the idea we're going with a lot of that is it allows us to increase our returns while decreasing our dilutions, which actually makes it easier to fundraise more equity, which is a little bit counterintuitive. So when people feel like they're not going to get super diluted, they're more interested and excited about investing the equity with you to get better valuations and better interest from people. So it's just trying to do a little bit of financial engineering here. We haven't gone to the more sophisticated sort of financial structuring thing and securitizations and all of that, but we'll get there.
I love it. Paul, can you answer your own question? What are you guys getting? What are you guys looking for? What's your kind of vision for post demo day?
Yeah, I think we started raising kind of recently, actually, like last week, and we're not actually sure the best way to use demo day. I've heard from some other YC companies, it's a great opportunity to potentially scout some customers. and try and utilize it that way. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it's trying to potentially beef up the round somewhat, but yeah, also kind of explore potentially getting connected with a lot of older YC companies as well.
Yeah, we unfortunately for us on our end, none of the companies that would be our early customers companies. We're probably pretty straightforward viewing it as a fundraising. But yeah, definitely it's interesting. All the alumni come back, and then there's a lot of people don't know this. There's an alumni demo day before the actual demo day. And a lot of interesting deal making can definitely go on then, especially scouting potential customers from the alumni. But Paul, thanks for being up here, man. Feel free to stick around. Love to have your perspective on some of these questions. So with that, we got Prototype Maker up here. Prototype Maker, what's going on? Happy Friday. What's your question?
Hey, Austin and everyone on the panel. Thank you so much for having this session. I started a business, the first prototype, in 2016. And after a bunch of failures, I was able to leave my full-time job in 2019. And last month, I actually hired my first full-time employee, a product design maestro on payroll. I am a prototype maker because I specialize in iOS and Android app design and development, and have published over 30 different apps for startups and businesses with over 200 deployments. My question is, does having a working prototype or product make a difference to chances of getting into YC and other similar accelerators?
You want to be as far along as possible. That's what I would say. You want to be doing things that are proving the efficacy of the concept you're trying to build, as well as like the size of the market. You want to figure out what the biggest risk is to the business and focus on those risks as early as possible. Sometimes that's building something, but sometimes that isn't. Sometimes that's actually just finding the customer, right? If you're B2B.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about Ray, Paul, Austin? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Ben. I would say that the short answer is yes. Seeing something real and putting in front of customers' hands is always good. But you have to think about like the goal of the prototype, right? The goal of a prototype, or some people call it a minimal viable product, is to test your hypothesis. So it's not about shipping something. It's about getting validation for your hypothesis. And that validation comes from customer feedback. So the goal of the prototype is to get customer feedback. I think having customer feedback and having customer usage is a lot more important than that prototype itself.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a great book on this as well. I quite like from Eric Ries called The Lean Startup, speaking about getting out there, putting it in the hands of people and failing fast and getting that early validation is really important.
If I could ask Mr. Prototype Maker, what's the motivation for the question? Because it sounds like you have no problem making prototypes, right? Is it are you just trying to figure out like what your relative value is and kind of in your application? Or is it something else?
That's a great question. So for me personally, because I've been helping startups, companies that have got into accelerators, Techstars, for example, and when I talk to such companies, I want to get a perspective from someone who's already gone through an accelerator, and see what their perspective is, because I don't want to falsely tell them that, hey, in order to get in, you need to have this, So now that I'm hearing from you guys that, oh no, focus on different things, perhaps like, read the book Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And also, like, personally, I've obviously been thinking about launching my own products and going that route myself. And so like that's the perspective.
I think that what YC values the most is you being able to show that you understand a customer and your customers basically, how you're going to make money, and whether or not a prototype addresses that, is questionable. It's definitely a first step towards showing how much you understand your customer, and a prototype is a prototype. It's always going to change. But yeah, having some kind of first step towards viability is definitely valuable. It can't hurt you unless it's really, really bad. And it clearly shows that you don't know what you're doing. Otherwise, I think it's valuable.
Also, full disclosure, our friend Ray here works for Eric, who wrote the Lean Startup. So, we might have a conflict of interest here in giving that advice. Just want to.
Very cool.
It's all
And thank
good.
you so
I
much,
like
guys.
how somebody else is helping me peddle Eric's book.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
exactly. Prototype, thanks for being up here. By the way, guys, I had some issues letting people up, so I closed hand raising and then I raised it again. So feel free to raise your hands. And if no one else raises their hands, we'll answer Matt's, and then we'll all have a really early start to our weekend. But with that, Matt, we got some hands raised. With that, I want to give Ben a chance to tell us what he and his bird wingman have been working on his shoulder.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. So I was in YC Winter 19 with a company called Doorport. Our focus was on making apartment building access better. So creating codes for package delivery to make it automated, letting people use their smartphones to unlock the front door. Exactly a year ago today, so today's the anniversary, we were acquired by Alarm.com. And I joined Alarm.com with the acquisition, so that's where I've been now. And so outside of that, I spend my time, talking to folks about new startup ideas and seeing where I can add value.
I love it. I love it. With that, Matt, happy Friday. Welcome to the Huddle. What's your question? How can we help?
Hey, happy Friday. Thank you guys so much for having me. Definitely a timely event for someone considering applying to this upcoming cohort. So I guess if I had to ask one question, I'm curious about the average traction, if there is any, for companies applying. I know on the application, it kind of seems like, you can apply with an idea scribbled down on a napkin, but then obviously I know some companies have come in with like millions in ARR. And so I'm just wondering if there's a general, I guess, average, or if you guys could talk about that in any way.
I don't think there's an average. I really don't. I mean, you basically just described the variety of companies that are in the current batch. I mean, literally like ideas to millions of dollars in revenue. So, I guess you can take an average of that statistically speaking, but it's not worth thinking about. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on this, but I feel like this just kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, which is YC cares more about, like how much you can demonstrate you understand the customers and the people you're trying to sell to. And revenue definitely speaks to that. Yeah.
I think as well in the batch, there's always loads and loads of companies that pivot quite heavily. So they expect that, or maybe not expect, but they're not surprised when you do pivot. And obviously, you can't really have revenue if you're changing direction quite regularly as a company. They're looking for like exciting industries that have a really big TAM and a lot of potential with founders that they believe can crack it. I think that's the most important stuff that they look for.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. Kind of what I thought, but I guess good to hear reinforced. So this is kind of an ask I just wanted to throw out there. I'm definitely, going to apply to YCombinator, and I'm looking to speak to some founders that have gone through that program just to learn a little more about what it was like and see if, I could be a little more prepared in any way. Would anybody be willing to set up like a quick 15-minute chat where I could just give an overview of my company and perhaps ask a few pointed questions?
DM's open.
Yeah, shoot us a DM. We are 10 days away from demo day right now, which happens to coincide with when you need to apply. I understand, but yeah, shoot us a DM and it potentially could see if we can work something out.
Thank you, guys. I will certainly do that.
Thanks, Matt. Matt, are you in LA or New York?
I'm in LA, actually.
Okay, if we work it out, you'll owe us a beer. That's all we ask.
I'll buy you a few.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know, when is the actual app due? I know demo day for us is in 10 days. When's the app due for YC?
8 p.m. on March 19th.
Oh, so less than 10 days. You got what, 7 days? Is today 12th? Yeah. We're
Yeah,
doing math
exactly.
here. We're doing math. We're doing it live, guys. Matt, thanks for being here. I just want to peg on one last bit on that, and which is that not only, I mean, there's really no average also because like everyone's so early that there's not really, not to be pedantic, but there's no real like distribution of traction either. It's certainly not a normal distribution, and like it's probably kind of like pretty much bimodal. You either have people who have basically no traction, and then you have people who have a bunch of traction. And within each of those groups of companies, some are they have no traction because what they're trying to do is really hard, and they've been working on it for a long time. Like Aaron, for example, had done over a year and a half of work and research building out an advisory board and understanding the problem. But the thing he's trying to do is very, very expensive, both in terms of time and money, and requires lots of hardware to solve the problem. And then you have people who also have no traction who came up with their idea 2 weeks ago, and got into YC. So like just to underline this idea, there really is no average. It certainly helps to have some traction potentially, but a lot of a really good application with lots of good research and a good pitch can also make up for very little traction. I hope that was useful. With that, I want to give Omar a chance to hype himself up, and then we'll move on to Tony. Omar, what have you been working on?
Thanks, Austin. So I'm a Winter 21 founder. So I'm going through the batch right now, demo days in 10 days. So we've been building an ability, something that allows businesses, mainly in Egypt, to offer financial services to their unbanked workers and customers. And we do that through an integration through an API and through on a web app, and sometimes even using our own app for people who don't have a technical solution. A little bit of a hyping up. We just closed our pre-seed a couple of days ago, raised $3 million between equity and debt, which is the largest round in the Middle East that I know of, which has been a great few days. So that's why we're still figuring out what we want to do for demo day.
Congrats, Omar.
Congrats,
Thanks.
Omar. It's awesome.
Love it, Omar. Awesome job, man. Thanks for being here. With that, we are going to move on. Was it Tony or Toma? I think it's Tony that's up next. Tony, happy Friday. Welcome to the huddle. What's your question and how can we help?
Hi, Austin. Thank you so much, guys, for having me up here. I have a question for you guys, and see if you guys have any opinions, you yourself or YC or some of the investors you've been in touch with. Do you guys have any opinions on incorporating as a B Corp versus a C Corp, and how that would affect you, maybe in the application process or your attractiveness to investors?
I don't think you can just become a B Corp all of a sudden. You have to be approved for that. And
that's very right. It's a long and lengthy process.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless you have a B Corp somehow already, like, that's awesome. But I don't think you can just do that on a whim. And so, I mean, the preference, at least for investors, is a Delaware C corporation.
I see. So if we had ambitions to become a B Corp and go through that process, do you think that would affect our attractiveness? Are there any like people that think that that's not a good path to go down?
Does that prevent you from becoming a billion-dollar company somehow? Because if it does, then it's definitely going to detract from people being interested in you. But I don't think it does. So
Yeah, I think the application has all these questions. It's like hundreds of questions. And then you have to like meet this minimum score around like impact and stuff like that. So the one thing I would push back on this just in general is the fact that companies tend to pivot so much in their very early stage that I don't know, I may be totally wrong. Maybe there are people who start as B Corps and pivot a ton, but like you might find that you need to pivot your company in a way that it totally potentially breaks your B Corp status. Does anyone have a thought? I mean, I just feel like you can always apply for B Corp status later as well. So I don't know if it is going to attract anyone to raise money. So more than just a regular Delaware C Corp would. So I would just, unless someone has a better argument against this, just build your company, get it to the point where it's growing, and then think about the B Corp stuff.
Yeah, I don't think mentioning that is going to really do anything for you up front, because you're going to have met all of those kind of expectations and qualifications to become a B Corp. And I mean, I don't know about me personally, but other investors would probably look at a statement like that and find it not too favorable, but I could be wrong. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of impact investors out there that would like something like that. I don't think before you even get there, it's not gonna like help you.
Okay, I understand. Very cool. Thank you so
can't
much.
speak to B Corps, but I can offer maybe a related thought. So
Sure.
we see a lot of companies getting formed and all the way to the IPO stage because we're a stock exchange that help companies go public. And what we learned is that companies that are built to last are built that way from the start. And more investors are thinking about this way. A specific example is ESG. Like you might think, oh, ESG is only something that public companies care about. Or maybe ESG is only something that oil gas company or a manufacturing company cares about. But we're actually seeing more and more ESG activity in the private market. And more VCs are actually trying to become ESG focused VCs and looking for companies with a great impact to our society and our environment. So this is probably why YC over time has also added a lot of impact related questions and filtering criteria to the application process. So I commend you for thinking about it. And I would definitely say, look into this, but at the same time, like what everyone else said, in early stages, a lot of startups are just trying to survive and get by the day because startups are default dead and you have to survive somehow. So balance your long-term vision versus your short-term needs.
I understand.
Tony, I hope that is useful. It's a great question. I'm gonna actually read more up on this though. Thanks for being here, by the way.
Thank you so much, Austin, Aaron, and Ray for the advice.
All right, bud. We'll see you around. Have a great weekend. With that, I know Tyler. We are blessed to have Tyler here for a short amount of time. Tyler, are you here or are you in between calls? All right, we don't have Tyler. That's okay. With that, I want to move on to allow Aaron if he has a second to hype himself up and tell us what he's been working on, and then we'll go on to Shira.
No, you go first. I'm deferring.
You're good. You're deferring. Okay, so Aaron is a solo founder, early decision solo founder, got into YC. I'm just riding his coattails and joined as a co-founder soon thereafter. Aaron and I are good friends. We go way back, and we're building a company in YCombinator. That's a hard tech company. We're focused on using advanced software and 3D metal printing to make everything that has to do with injection molding 2 times faster, 2 times more durable, and hopefully cheaper over the long term. So with that, I want to move on to Shira and say, hey, happy Friday. How are you doing? What's your question and how can we help?
Hey, Austin. Thank you for pinging me to this room, first of all. But second of all, I am actually super, super curious about two things in particular. One, which I know that there is somewhat of an answer on the website. Two, which is something that there is absolutely no answer I can find anywhere for. So the first is regarding, so I have personally this huge restriction because MIT makes it almost impossible to do anything profitable outside if you also have a security clearance because of their legal department and because of conflict of interest and all of this stuff. So I have like 40 different ideas that I've been working on, but haven't been able to actually launch anything for. So the first one is like when it says you can't apply with more than, or like they don't recommend applying with more than one idea for like a batch. How strict is that? Is the kind of question. Is A, like if I were to send in like multiple applications for several different ideas that I couldn't put together into one application, even if I tried, what would that do? But then two is, this is something I wasn't able to find anything on the website for. I know that the whole idea of like the business plan isn't like that important for it, but if, for instance, my background is in research and I have never grown a company or anything like that, what are the pros and cons of applying as a solo founder or applying as part of a group for things?
So I don't know. Did you hear much of like the other questions leading up to this? I'm gonna like.
No, I pinged her in right before Tony, right after Tony started speaking.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, what is it? So it's multiple. Can we apply multiple times? And what are the pros and cons of being a solo founder if you're purely technical? I think are the two main questions.
Yes.
Aaron, go off, baby. Come on.
Just gonna harp on this again, but yeah, I mean, YC cares most about, you know, how well you understand a customer, right? Like not the idea itself. And so applying with a single application that's very strong in terms of, you know, not just like your understanding of the problem, but how much you understand the customer is going to go a lot further in their eyes. Because if you're scattered across a whole bunch of different ideas, it's probably going to show them that you're a little more scattered as a person. And you want to kind of focus your energy on a single thing. And to that end, some people were mentioning like the companies pivot inside the batch once they're in there, and that's okay. And there's actually a place on the application, I think, I don't know if they removed it yet, but they typically ask, you know, if you're not working on this idea, what else would you be working on? And they give you a chance to talk about other ideas. There's like a question for that, but you know, you're only going to just give them kind of like a one-liner on your other ideas. And then, yeah, in terms of going solo or as a group, again, you know, the risk spread across multiple founders is a lot easier for them to stomach when, you know, you have a team versus a solo founder who, if they don't have a track record, I think Ben mentioned this at some point, or maybe in a previous conversation, that it's a lot more challenging for a solo founder to get in just because of that risk profile and probably the, you know, general level of experience that that person has. So I'll pause there.
I was going to add that like the program is kind of structured around you join. It's like a 10-week program, which, I mean, Austin, everyone's been through this. Like it flies by, right? Like I'm sure for you guys, like demo day is approaching right now, and you're like, oh my god, it feels like it just started, right?
Don't trigger me, Ben.
Yeah, it flies by, and so it's basically like the program structured around you need to be able to get a lot done in 10 weeks, and or at least if you're doing something hard tech, still get a lot done in those 10 weeks to be able to go to demo day with, right? Because you're kind of judged at demo day based on what you've done during those 10 weeks. You're also judged based on the life of the company, but I mean, you can basically, as long as you can craft a great story of like, here's what we've done over the past 10 weeks and here's where we're going, that's what kind of makes or breaks you when it comes to raising at demo day. And so it's kind of, I would think of it from that perspective. It's kind of like if I got into YC on the application, it kind of structures questions around this. If I got into the program, like how am I gonna be able to accelerate what I'm doing in 10 weeks and get a lot done to a certain end, and then come out of there guns blazing and raise money and be off to the races.
Just to underline that point, it's much more a relative measure of progress rather than in absolute terms. So, and part of that is just practical because different companies are in different industries, and so progress looks different across those dimensions. But also because what they want to see is not so much that you have one giant sale and you got nothing else done, but they want to see not even month over month returns and growth, but you meet with your advisors every week. They're looking at week over week growth, and that can be actual sales or customers. So customers is kind of like the second best metric, but it pales in comparison to dollars in the door. So if you have a way to show growth from the start of the program to the end of the program that's rapidly rising in relative terms, but not necessarily in absolute terms, that's still really valuable to YC because they're looking at this as in the long view. And if you're more like a hard tech company like Aaron and I's, like Atomic, the company we're working on, it's much more about can you be getting LOIs or R&D contracts, some kind of traction week over week or even month over month from beginning to end of the program, just because that metric makes more sense in that industry where we're not going to be getting revenue for a long time, and that's like part of the plan. So yeah, it's really, can you get in the door and start showing progress from day one to demo day.
So one more thing maybe to add as a solo founder here. So actually a couple of days before our application deadline Michael was giving a talk, and he kept sort of saying how hard it would be to get in as a single founder. And for some reason I decided to apply either way. But coming out of it, I would say I felt like I was at a disadvantage being a solo founder, just trying to, because it took me some time, and I don't know about you guys, to figure out how to get the maximum benefit of these 10 weeks, because they do go by very quickly, and figuring out how to get the maximum sort of leverage out of the YC program and the structure and everything, the facilities you had available to you in this short time, while also focusing on the business. So it was a little bit hard to focus on both, and it took me a little bit of time to just get up to speed, which I think I would have been in a much better position had there been someone there helping. Just want to add that.
So I think it also matters whether all your ideas are very different, that are not lined centered around the same mission. So when our company first joined YC, we were a multi-product company, but they're all aligned around the same mission of helping startups succeed. And I think that helped. So just personally, I feel like it'll be okay to have multiple products centered around the same mission, but it will be weird and, like Austin said, like hard to get growth on multiple fronts if they are desperate ideas.
Just a specific question that we kind of danced around but that Shira asked very pointedly, which I don't know the answer to, is how does it look if you send in multiple applications, just totally different ideas? I've not heard of anyone doing that.
I've never heard of that myself.
No, I was
Sure, you can be the first.
I'm literally considering just like dumping like 40 applications based off of things that like I haven't been able to launch because MIT is so slow to approve things. But that's not to say badly about MIT. Like I love MIT. It's just like a bureaucratic process. So
They like contrarian ideas and approaches, so it could be really interesting. I don't know.
It could be a meme. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe if you pitch it as like trying to circumvent the tech transfer office at MIT, maybe they'll think that's very contrarian.
What if
Cool.
like
Paul Graham would
my
like that.
ideas make the next batch? No, I'm kidding. That would be the worst. But like, imagine, like, could you get in on multiple ideas in the same batch? I don't think I would, and I don't think that you probably could, probably for good reason. But just hypothetically, imagine if somebody sent in like 40 ideas, and every idea in the batch is just this person's.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, just use multiple identities. Actually, no, I don't want to say that. I'm not. Well, thanks for the question, Shira. I really appreciate it. With that, Toma, you are on the huddle. Happy Friday. How are you doing? What is your question? How can we help?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing a seed round currently, and I think we're gonna close it. It's doing well, and I guess like my question is how do you find your like first couple employees, like your first engineer, 1, 2, 3, right? And like if you're realistically gonna be a 6, 9 person team, like how do you maximize each of your hires, I guess?
Are you the CEO?
The CTO.
Okay. How big is your team right now?
Just me and the CEO.
Okay. Yeah. How much work have you guys done so far in trying to hire people, or like looking at who's out there?
We just built out our product and our MVP, and then we showcased it, and then we're just closing around now, and to hire more and then launch it.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, typically, I mean, you guys can feel free to push back on this if you want, but you know, early on, there are a lot of hats to wear, right? And focusing on building is obviously really good. If you are getting to the stage where you're already closing a round, I feel like you probably should have been getting on top of the ball for trying to hire people and going out into the world and, you know, searching. I don't know what kind of talent or expertise you're looking for, but that process usually begins the same time you start raising, not after it's done. And, you know,
Well, so our situation is unique. I need to find smart contract and engineers specifically that know layer 2 technologies. They're very difficult to find. We're trying to raise money from strategic partners and VCs to help us even find them, actually. So
yeah, I mean, for something really specialized like that, maybe even starting earlier. It's not like me saying any of this is not helping, you now, because you have to get going, like, and find these people. So I think the best way to do that, especially if they're really specialized, is finding people who are in those positions right now. Try to hit them up over LinkedIn or connect with them however you can, maybe here on Clubhouse. Find out like what kind of things incentivize them to join, the companies that they work at. Maybe help you network into some of their industry, friends who might also be in those positions or like looking for jobs right now. That's usually the quickest way to find specialist engineers, in my experience.
yeah, the problem is like I have the friends and contacts. I can do it myself. It's just like the scale is getting too large, and the problem is prices in crypto are too high, and so everyone's either too rich and they don't want to work, and so it's just a somewhat difficult position to find people that are willing to work currently. So I'll shoot it in the dark. Anyone in the room, if you know coding smart contracts, Solidity, specifically layer 2s on Optimism, a sidechain Matic or PSC, or even if you know how to integrate MetaMask, even fuck it. Hit me up on Twitter. I can teach you a lot, and we'll find something. So I guess that was thanks, guys.
Toma, thanks for being here. And for those who are just joining the room for the first time, that is fully within the acceptable use parameters of the room. We love when people are able to come up and ask questions, but are also able to come up and solicit, whether it's people who are looking to hire someone or who have a question that we don't know the answer to. Please definitely feel free to use this as a platform. I think we actually got a hire for an internship from last week. I just found out, or from Monday actually, I just found out, which is pretty cool. So Toma, thanks for being here, man. Let's see. I'm gonna do a PTR because the order is all weird. Who's up next? Paul, are you back up again? Somehow you got demodded.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. I had to leave the room as well, and then I came back.
Okay. Nabil, what's going on? Oh, we have a couple people with their hands up with no profile information. Or didn't let them up, and so they put their hands down. Feel free to come on up, guys, but just give us a little context to who you are, especially if you have no photo and zero bio. It's just a little hard to figure out what's going on there. But yeah, with that, Nabil, happy Friday. Welcome to the huddle. How you doing? What's your question? How can we help?
Hey guys, thank you. Yeah, I got a question about YC. I'm trying to evaluate. I think I came last time, also asked a few questions, but would love your thoughts. Trying to evaluate if it's the right time for us to apply to YC. I got some feedback from some people, and I would like to verify. Like some recommendations are coming to me, saying like we're early stage, meaning like we got a first MVP, but we don't have any customers yet. We're talking to a first customer. Some recommendation from somebody came saying that maybe it's better if we are further along in the journey of the company, meaning like we're ready for prime time, because once if we got in to YC, it will be a big exposure and we should be ready for like scale or things of that sort. So I wanted to just get your guys' opinion. If are we too early, if we don't have customers or we didn't touch the market fully yet? What are you guys' thoughts?
I think it's always a good time to apply, right? It doesn't really hurt to apply and just figure out. Because I think just going through the application, and this is something we've figured, is like it gets you to understand even your business more, especially which is more relevant even when you're early enough. So I would say just apply either way.
Yeah, think of it like think about what your optionality is in applying. Like if you spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, over the next 8 days or whatever, trying to apply, then maybe it's not worth your time. But, if you put an hour or two into it, and then it ends up looking a lot more like a really, really cheap call option, which is great because, you can make the decision whether or not to do YC after you find out if you even got into YC or not,
Got it. Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate this.
Yeah, Nabil, definitely. Thanks for coming back. Love that. We got a couple hands raised here. With that, we're moving on. We're chugging along here, guys. This is a great Friday. Everyone, feel free, by the way. It's 12:50 in LA, so that means it's 3:50 in New York. I hope everyone's already starting to pour out a nice whiskey for themselves or maybe a red wine. Let's get the weekend started early. With that, Tejas?
Tejas.
That is the coolest name I've seen in a long time. Welcome to
Thank
the
you.
huddle, man. Happy Friday. What is your question? How can we help?
Thank you, guys, and thank you for doing this. So I'm an engineer in NYC at a startup, and I've been like applying to YC for my previous two startups since 2014 and 2018. And from what I see, so for my startup, we had like a little bit of traction and everything. But what I feel, and obviously they don't tell us why the application was rejected, but I feel like there's something missing in the personal brand that I have or my co-founders had. So do you guys have any tips on building that? Like, how did you guys do it? Like, I would love to know that, or should I try to get into some FANG company which builds on like a credibility for my name to get it easier into YC later on? That's my question.
So actually, when we applied to YC, we got in. Myself and my co-founder, we had not worked at any big companies. We had like zero of that stuff at all. This was our first proper job. I think what they're looking for is mostly why are you competent and why are you appropriate to solve the problem in that given market. But obviously, if you've worked at Google or you've had successful companies, that will definitely up your chances, but it's certainly not a requirement. I think if you do a lot of very good stuff, by yourself and you show how competent you are, I think that definitely can make up for it.
Okay, got it.
I think are you broadly asking whether you should go get a job that will look better on your resume for when you then apply to YC?
Right. Yeah. So basically, should I be building my personal brand first? Like, in terms of working at, say, Apple or Google or somewhere.
Well, what's
Plus,
your
like being
let's take a step back. What do you
sure.
what do you want to build, and what is your experience in that space already kind of look like? Which I think
So
also doesn't even necessarily matter, but it's still let's just go with that real quick.
sure. So we are. So my app is called Decision Fiction, and what we do is we get like a lot of like interactive stories from writers, and we aggregate them, and then we distribute them on different platforms. Um, and then so I'm like on the tech side, and I have a co-founder who's on the business side of things. He's a writer, and he focuses on getting new writers, onboarding new writers, and I focus on building the tech side of it and getting more content. And we've been applying with that concept for a couple of times at YC and other accelerators, but we're not getting like much much luck with it. So we were like, so that's kind of started puzzling us. That is it that like because of our profile we're not getting into, or is it like we are lacking on traction, or what is really going on? Is what was like puzzling us a lot.
I wouldn't, without knowing more, I just kind of if I can make a blanket statement, I wouldn't go and take a job that you don't necessarily want because you think it'll help you get into the accelerators. Just kind of, that's sort of like a broad sweeping statement, but you don't even know why you haven't gotten in, like you said. It could just be, you're unlucky, but and the other side of this is like there's so many companies in YC and other places that don't have those bona fides on their resumes in the area that they're trying to build a company for, or even at all. Like there's a guy in YC right now who's 19. His resume is very short, but he came up with a cool idea and had a great application and he got in. So I just would be very careful about like going down the path of like, what would that look like? A year or two, that the other side of this, I guess, would be if it's a job that you actually want and think would be cool, and you can keep applying for startup accelerators along the way. And the real value of that job is that you're going to be getting paid and joining a cool company and maybe growing and learning a lot along the way. I would definitely do that, but I wouldn't like pivot your whole career just to kind of get a resume line item based on the name of the company that you're at and thinking that that's going to signal to YC or someone.
I also would probably just not waste your time thinking about any of this, honestly.
Yep.
I think that I think you have a really great opportunity to network with other YC founders if you haven't already done this, and put your application in front of as many of them as you can. Get as much feedback as you can and help them understand what you're trying to do so that they can help you get into YC if that's ultimately what you're really trying to do. So yeah, I would say use the people in the YC network to go over your application. Just outsource it, like it's a much better use of your time than doing all this other extraneous stuff.
Yeah, and just so I love, because Aaron really gets to the point instead of what I do, which is kind of tippy toe around. And I think if you want to be a founder, don't go work for someone else. Like ultimately, especially if you're younger, your risk profile is awesome. Like you can just go and build the thing. But the other thing is you never have to wait to stop and drop everything to start building a personal brand. Like that, just always be doing that along the way. But building a personal brand isn't just about, like I said, line items on your resume. You can be building that constantly, and you're kind of doing that by being on here in some sense and talking to YC founders, like Aaron said. So I hope that was useful.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, guys. I'll definitely take that advice.
Send us your application. Our DMs are open.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
If anyone, if I can be so bold, if anyone down below, past, present YC founders or anyone who's startup accelerators that think what Tejas was saying was interesting, shoot him a DM. With that, let's see. We got Mo up next. Mo, happy Friday. Welcome to the Huddle. What is your question? How can we help?
I actually don't have a question at the moment.
You're good, Mo. You're good. Just crack open a beer and get the weekend started early. We will move on to Susanna. Susanna, happy Friday. What is your question? How can we help?
Hey folks, thanks for organizing this. I've really learned a lot. It's my first time being with you all. I work for the Polish government. I'm based out of Texas. One of my roles is to help Polish startups launch in the US, and YC is obviously a great bridge to that. I was wondering if anyone in the room or anyone on the panel might have some tips for startups from abroad, foreign startups, on how to crack the code of YC.
Omar.
Yeah, I feel that's my turn. I don't think there's a code per se, right? I think I think we already talked about the formula. If you need to have some sort of a path to $100 million in revenues, which would translate into $1 billion company or a $10 billion company. But there isn't much of a formula. Actually, I think the harder part for foreign companies, non-US based, actually comes after YC. So it's just getting the fundraising post YC. This is when it gets harder compared to US companies. But I actually think even YC might be a little bit more bullish and might be more accepting of less developed ideas that come out of foreign countries rather than the US. But that's just me shooting in the dark. But I think it's much easier. It's just, again, it's the same thing for a US or a non-US company. Just need to have the drive, know what you're doing, and be willing to build it up and fight through it to get to the $1 billion and $10 billion valuation. But the issue is actually comes after YC, not to get into YC.
Great. Are there any sort of tips? I know that teams are really important, and in the US you can kind of validate those teams by where they went to school or past launches and stuff like that. Is there any other tips to get beyond that? If you have a Polish startup that has some sort of revenue in the EU, translating that into their application.
I have a thought. Maybe Omar, you can share, if you're open to it, about your legal entity structure. Because I know that for other countries, both YC and other VCs, they want to invest in international or cross-border startups with a specific legal entity structure. Maybe that they would require that the startup has a legal entity in the US for them to buy shares in. And for that, you can use something simple like Stripe Atlas. So I've definitely heard of that before. Omar, maybe you can share yours as well.
Sure. We, for specific local reasons on the Egyptian level, I had to go with a Singapore holding. So YC gives you the option of doing US, Canada, Cayman, or Singapore. So the first three were a no-go for us due to specific legal restrictions that differ from each country to the next vis-a-vis Egyptian setups. So that's why we went with Singapore. But also a lot of even the VCs that we talked to that we would be willing to do a structure where you would come to the US. Would also, some of them even had issues, or not issues, they're not really, have really done the Middle East a lot, and they've mainly been doing sort of emerging markets more towards Latin America rather than, and maybe in Asia, but not much Middle East. So even going with the US entity, while it would make things a little bit easier, it would still be a little bit hard to do. Maybe going back to Susanna's question on the team, I think for European sort of employment history or a track record, I think it's much easier than what we have here in the Middle East. But I think the main thing that it just needs to pop through the application is that you know what you're doing and why you know what you're doing, or at least how you figured out that problem. That was not so. For us, it was really important to sort of understand my background mainly, and that's something we discussed. That was discussed a lot in my interview because of the specific nature, and I'm sure Aaron and Alston might have a similar situation because with fintech and to a much greater extent with hard tech, the background and knowing how to do things in that industry and how to structure things is very important. But I think if they can sort of verify employment history or what you've done in the Middle East, I think Europe is going to be much easier to do. Sorry if it was a long answer.
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Sorry, my phone is ringing. My phone is ringing. I hate that. It blocks the app. No, that was awesome, Omar. I really do appreciate it. That was a great point. And thank you for going long, because these two dogs that are at the Airbnb I'm staying at just ran in and knocked over my coffee. So I'll be cleaning that up. Aaron, Ben, Ray, could someone take over moderating for a few minutes here?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to jump up for a couple of seconds and say hi to Susanna. I was actually sponsored by, I believe, your organization to go to Poland in 2017 and learn about like trade back and forth between the US and Poland. So I'd be interested to chat. You just don't have any contact info on your profile.
All right, I'll update that. Thank you so much, Ian. I will update that,
Yeah.
and let's connect.
I don't think I'm any use. I just think it would
That's
be
okay.
fun to chat.
No, it's fun to chat, and it's always fun to talk to people who have been exposed to that tech ecosystem in Poland. So I'll update that, and then we'll connect for sure.
What a
Awesome.
small world.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see who's up next. Evan. Evan, are you just hanging out, or you got a question today?
No question today. I'm building something, but it's not really in the state where it's ready for a question. Came up to provide any insight on YC, if I can. I went through 2017, and I've also applied to a bunch of other accelerators. So happy to help anybody.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
I'm
Diego.
just gonna jump in while I'm cleaning up. We got Tyler is back. Real quick, Tyler, you here? Tyler.
Hey, yo, what it do, everybody? Happy Friday. What's happening?
Yes, sir. Give us a quick blurb on what you're working on, and then we'll move on to the next person. I'm going back to cleaning up the spilled coffee.
Okay, good looks. Yeah, so hi, I'm Tyler. I'm one of the co-founders of Resquared. I've been in the commercial real estate tech intersection for a while. Used to sell companies like Subway, Burger King, Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings are all past customers of mine. And what we do is we help property owners and landlord brokers fill their spaces with small businesses. I'm proud to say we grew 24% just last week. So we're taking off like a rocket ship, proud to be a part of YC, and really excited to be working with my co-founder Griffin and our entire team. So happy to be here, and sorry I had to miss the first little piece to do an onboarding. Maybe that was too quick. So
no, I think we're safe. I think we're safe. Diego, what's up? What's your question?
Hey guys, it feels like this Clubhouse thing was perfect timing because I was already applying to the YCombinator, and then this friend invited me to Clubhouse, and now I see all this YCombinator stuff. It's pretty awesome. But my quick question is, I'm applying with this app idea called StarTag. But what I was wondering is on the demo video that is asking, if you guys could give some general tips of what would be good to include in that, how brief to make it, how not brief, how detailed to go, just general demo video tips for an app idea. That would be great. I'm done talking.
I could jump on that, Diego. I would say brevity is key, man. I would say, you don't want to make it like a 10-second video, but one thing that I've discussed with YC folks is they purposely make the interview short, right? Because people end up talking themselves out of the opportunity if they have too much time to talk. And I think that more or less the same idea applies to the demo. So, just make it clear on what the value prop is, but I wouldn't treat it as like a, user manual, obviously, nor not that you're suggesting that, but I think brevity is key in balancing it, and just focus on making sure it's a clear put together, but I wouldn't spend too much time, making it too sexy. I think they'll see right through it.
Okay, that's great. But also, I have a very rough MVP, I guess, and it's missing a lot of features, obviously. Should I try to include the features I wish it was in there, even though I can't really show it?
I think that as long as you're clear of what you want to add, and you can maybe speak to that in the demo, but a lot of the part of YC is taking your MVP and adding to it, so I think that's actually a great situation to be in, right? You haven't spent a whole bunch of time building something without realizing if people want it or not, right? So I think the fact that you don't have everything built is an advantage, because you don't want to accidentally build something that you think people are going to embrace and then not. So don't be ashamed of that. I think you should just own that and be transparent in the demo of, hey, here's where it's at now. Here's what I think we can add, but just keep emphasizing that, look, I want to launch it and get feedback, because that's the name of the game, is letting the market decide.
The V
Cool.
in MVP stands for viable. So if your product is viable enough to test your hypothesis, then that's good enough. I agree with Tyler, keep it brief. But if you are missing crucial features that makes your MVP not viable enough to test your hypothesis, then I would say you might have to rethink the whole MVP thing, because you might as well just not include the whole thing.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thanks for those tips. Very helpful. Gives me a better aim at what I should put in there. Thanks.
I got a question for you guys. So I'm a fellow batchmate, Winter 21, and I'm curious, how are you finding YC being remote?
I can talk on this a little bit, just because I also went through Techstars back in 2015 with my first company. Obviously, the experiences are completely different, but so far, being remote, everybody's going to have their own experience, but I think we've been able to stay on target and have definitely picked up a good amount of education from the partners, and have been able to connect with everybody that we need to. Probably could be connecting with a lot more people. So that's probably my one gripe, is that the way that they broke up the groups in the batch and everything like that could have been a little bit more different or well thought out, because there are a lot more hard tech and science and space related companies that have overlap with what we're doing versus like a SaaS company. And I think it's really important that founders in the same space are with each other and able to kind of share their experiences and insights as they're going through the process.
I can speak to the old way. You guys aren't going to miss the food at all. It was not good.
Not missing the
Nice.
food. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the dinners were a lot of, I wonder how well they've repeated the experience of kind of watching the people live and the networking. That's the one thing I think I would miss if it was not, live and in person.
So without knowing what the original YC format was like, or not having experienced it at least, I can say one of the benefits or interesting things about seeing where the program goes in the long term is just the fact that when you're fully remote, you can give access to way more companies and way more diverse parts of the globe, right? So there's, I don't know the exact stats, but there's more companies than ever now, and they're from more countries than ever now. And a lot of that's, it's just really difficult to relocate when you're halfway across the globe, to relocate to the Bay Area versus someone who lives in LA that just needs to relocate for the batch. So that's one of the definite real positives I think we've seen, and potentially something that's going to persist in the long term, even after things get back to normal. And they do, back in person batches. I'm curious if they're going to do like a hybrid thing in the future. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard them mention that.
Yeah,
I hope
my
they do. I think that would
hypothesis.
make a lot of sense. Sorry.
Yeah, doing like a hybrid approach, that I think it would too. Also, Peter down in the audience, I've tried to bring you up multiple times with the Black Sabbath profile picture, which is awesome, by the way. But sorry if you can't get up.
Peter's a longtime listener too. He was here last week. Peter, sorry we can't get you up here. Peter with the sword, right?
Yeah, it's Black Sabbath album cover.
Oh, I'm embarrassed. I didn't know that. Oops. Okay. Aaron,
you
you're in
want it?
charge now. Who's next?
Chidera.
Chidera, man. Good to see you again. How you doing?
Hey, sorry, it took me. I was like actually taking the trash. I just got back from work, so I was just taking the trash out and etc. So that's why I didn't meet quick. But I've been good. Been a pretty like long week. I feel like I could have been way more productive during the week than I was, but like who doesn't? So
Do you want us to give you a minute while you do the trash and go on to
no,
someone
it's
else real
okay.
quick?
I just
Okay.
I just finished. Yeah, okay, cool. So my question isn't like particularly like YC related. So
That's
I think
fine.
yeah, great. So it's like based around like the like early adopters. So I was just wondering if you guys had any advice on how to find early adopters for a product, especially for an MVP, and then how to what's it called? And how to like acquire them, like good strategies for both. And I guess if it helps like being a little bit specific, this is for like one of my like ventures, which is like a simple politics website, which basically just summarizes like political news into really quick, easy to read like news summaries and etc. So yeah.
Who's your customer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's like part of the trick. That's why like I need a little bit of advice, like how finding like the early adopters, because like it's my customer is basically anyone who like wants to like either just wants who's like a casual like political like active, not political activists, but like casual like news reader. Like they don't know like all the political jargon, or they don't want to like read like long articles, or like people who just like really simple news and just want to get like have a short attention span and just want to understand what's going on. And then like what's been really tricky about it, it's hard to like signal like kind of like corral that into one like specific demographic. So I'm a little bit out of breath. Sorry, I was just like I don't know. I need to run more. But yeah. So like it's just hard because I get all kinds of people. I'll get like working moms. I'll get like 50-year-old corporate guys. I'll obviously get college students and young adults.
So I question for you. So you and I talked about this on the phone the other day, and it was cool to dive in more deep what you were working on. Something I forgot to ask you when we were talking is we talked briefly about Morning Brew, just in terms of their path to go from zero to one really, and then grow. But I didn't ask you then. Do you think Morning Brew readers are heavily overlapped in terms of your customer? Just to go off Aaron's question.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That was something I was thinking about. I also took your advice on like reading up more about stuff like the Skim. The Skim was kind of not very, it wasn't a very good like startup story to read about, because both of those people were they had a long history in like broadcasts and stuff. So they literally just like contacted their network to help spread it. And then they also got a shout out from like a broadcaster that they knew, which got them like a really like a accelerated growth. In terms of the overlap with Morning Brew question, I definitely feel like, I mean, right now, like we're kind of not in like the newsletter space, kind of like we've kind of like kept away from that, but we're thinking about like pivoting into that. But I definitely feel there's like an overlap. A lot of people who actually like come to us to like, oh, like we felt like Morning Brew, like wow, it's okay, it's kind of long, and they kind of send too many emails and stuff like that. So yeah.
The Morning Brew founders did an amazing How I Built This interview that I highly recommend you should check out. And I don't know if you were describing a minute ago them, where they just had some context and did it, but that was not the story that I heard. It was really amazing how they kind of hacked it and kind of started at, you would go into business classes at University of Michigan, and I think I listened about 3/4 of the interview. But and my advice to you would be, to Aaron's first question, like who is the customer, and to your point, that's the early adapter. I think really do some research into personas, like Google how to build a persona, and you want to be able to describe, maybe you're the customer, right? Like what do you do when you wake up? Where do you get your news? Like for me, for example, I work with landlord brokers and property owners. And if they're active on LinkedIn, and if they're active on, doing Facebook groups and stuff, I know that they're embracing social media, and they almost self-qualifying themselves, right? So once you figure out who your persona is, but don't just think of it in terms of like boring demographics where they're this age and this ethnicity and make this much income. Like, that's boring. I think you need to be thinking about it more of like, who are they as people? What are their habits? You know, what kind of car do they drive? You know, where do they spend their time? What are they proud of? You know, and I think if you did some research on persona, HubSpot has a ton of good content out there that's going to lead you to it. And I think my advice is be very granular. Like, I think if it's just like young people that like news, shitty persona, right? Like, what kind of young people? Like, are they smart? Are they not smart? Are they an Ivy League? Are they not? You know, and just be able to describe, you know, a day in the life. And I think people that do personas right, I did this at my last company and I want to get it printed here, is you literally get like a printout of your persona and you put it in your office or in your apartment or your house or whatever. So I really think that doing the persona research is super important. And I like what you're doing. I think it's super cool. I love checking out Morning Brew and the Hustle, which was just acquired by HubSpot, by the way. So I strongly recommend thinking of it more like with more context than just they're this age and they live here, you know, get a little bit more context to it.
Yeah, also sorry if I misspoke. The company I was describing was the Skim that did all that broadcast stuff. I actually did read about Morning Brew too, and yeah, like their story about the colleges was really cool. My question is, like, once I build like the persona, and I have done like research into empathy maps and stuff like that. So once I build like the persona, that's a really good advice. Where do I go from there, from like building the persona? Like, how do I use that to like leverage it into like, yeah.
That's the whole point of the persona, right? Because if your persona is your grandma, then it's going to be a completely different answer than if the persona is you, right? Like, so you it's impossible for anybody to give you any valid advice on that unless there's a clear understanding of the persona. You know, it's like you got to know who you're trying to serve first. And then the next thing I would say to do tactically is, what is the value that you add? You know, and I think Aaron asked a good question I've heard in the past of like, go down the value chain, you know, and I'm sure you've checked out Gary Vaynerchuk in the past. One thing, he can get on my nerves a little bit, but one thing that he says that really resonates with me is, you know, jab, 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 right hook. So what can you give somebody before you ask for anything, you know? So once you find out that your persona is X, Y, and Z, and they're on Twitter or they're on Snapchat or whatever, figure out where they're at and what's the value that you can give them up front, right? I think a lot of people make the mistake of, you know, I think prospecting is a lot like eating, right? Like, you wouldn't just walk up to somebody at a Starbucks and be like, hey, do you want to go on a date next week? You know, that's called being a psychopath. You know, you got to at least say hi and like, you know, say what's up. So once you figure out who your persona is, that's the answer to your question based off that answer.
I will also suggest that you find a niche within politics. Like, just politics itself is too general. I think one of the dangers of doing a B2C consumer-based startup is that like everybody, the entire population is your customer. That's very dangerous. So I agree with Tyler that you gotta nail down your initial persona and that niche that you want to target. And I also wouldn't discuss, you know, dismiss the, you know, the stay-at-home moms and dads that are coming onto your app, right? Because perhaps they are your best customers. Like, why would a stay-at-home mom and father want to use your app and read politics on your site versus somewhere else?
Wait, was that a rhetorical question or?
Yeah, I just meant like find out, okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are people coming to you, right? And then you can learn something from there. And perhaps you just have to make a call and say, this is the persona that I want to target, or it's actually okay and say, I don't want customer like this yet. I'm going to target a different niche and a different persona.
Chidera, thank you for being up here, but I'm going to move on just because we got a hard cutoff in 9 minutes, and I want to get through everyone who's up here. But thank you, bud. No, it's just so I closed off hand raising, guys, just because we want to get through to everyone. So with that, my friend Mikey, good to see you again. How you doing? Welcome to the huddle.
Hey, Austin, did we skip N?
We might have. Let me PTR. Oh yeah, I guess. Oh, and did we skip you?
Oh no, I just wanted to comment on something else. I can drop down.
Okay, Mikey, what's going on? Mikey's just chilling. Jeremiah, you're up next.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Jeremiah, and I'm talking to some people about creating an NFT marketplace with maybe some gamification features and we're trying to find an engineer, and I would like some advice on how to go about finding a good engineer. I'm gonna like post on my Facebook to start, but I feel like you guys must have run into this before.
We can definitely comment on that. Do you want to real quick just give a description of what you're doing and like just shout out anyone who's in the audience? Maybe there's someone down below. What kind of skills are you looking for? Are your DMs open? Should they hit you up? And if so, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so you could hit me up on Instagram or Twitter, and I think we're basically looking for somebody that's definitely interested in the NFT space, maybe has some game development background, art background, music industry background would be good. And I think, yeah, I feel like definitely want to find somebody that is fun to work with. Really, I think that's like a big thing that we're both definitely into, like not taking things too seriously on the like hanging out side of things. So yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I should start looking on LinkedIn or.
Yeah, I got you. Well, so I just want to make sure you had your shout out. So are there any specific skills people need, or just shoot you a DM if they're into NFTs and they can code and stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And then any other advice you guys would have on basically if you're just talking to a potential co-founder and kind of some of the most important things to figure out early on before starting a project like this with somebody.
Yes, sir. Anyone have thoughts on how to find good engineers? And yeah, let's just start with that because I think we might just take that question so we can fit everyone in.
I just wanted to ask Jeremiah real quick. Are you looking for someone to program smart contracts or build a website? Because they're hugely different. I mean, somebody can do one, sometimes do the other, but very different.
Yeah, I would think probably both. So maybe two different people. That's the thing. I'm not a developer. I'm gonna actually like do some programming classes just to get a little more familiar with it so I can actually understand what engineers are talking about. But
yeah, you're gonna need both. They're two completely orthogonal skill sets. So yeah, just on that, Evan, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, you're definitely gonna need to.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on that because you could probably build an NFT marketplace using one of the existing tools, or you could be trying to build something more complex, and it'll matter a huge amount in what you're trying to do and who you need. I've heard it's very hard to get blockchain engineers these days.
Yeah, they're in very high demand. Jeremiah, guys, like, what are the best resources? Maybe we could just drop a couple of resources and move on, just in terms of like websites, for finding engineers. But it's kind of a broad question.
Yeah, I mean, before you get to the what tools can we use in order to find engineers, I think the best thing to do in the early stage is because you need to be filtering people that you like and that you know, and you need to be finding that person that is going to work with you close. I think one of the best things to do is like think who do you know that is enthusiast from your own circle and map them. If you know like 5 people or if you know 10 people, write them down and then call them and ask them who do they know. So use your own circle to use their own circle before you get into all of the tools. I think that's the best starting point.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be my thing today, is to just post on Facebook. And I already talked to like somebody that I worked with that was a co-founder engineer, so I know that he probably knows some people. But I think, yeah, some websites, some tools, some resources, pretty much, yeah, any advice about even just starting something and like how to get it, to the point where you could take it to YCombinator. Like what do you need to have prepared before you try to do something like that?
Well, Jeremiah, the last piece I'd give also is just, you're on an app right now where half the rooms are talking about NFTs. So I would really drop into some of those rooms and, start adding people, try to get on stage, maybe ask that question. Or if it's, a very technical question, just see who's on there, who seems to have developer backgrounds, and start DMing people. I would really start there before you think about, applying to YC and all that. If you don't if you don't have the technical team. It's not that no one can get into YC without a technical team, but if you're 100% purely idea stage and you don't and it's in a very technical space, like where it's kind of that's going to be the make or break of the company, like NFTs. I think you'd be best to kind of first lock that bit down. And so with that, I'm just going to move on to Yasha. I hope that's useful, Jeremiah. Thanks for being up here. Yasha, what's going on? Happy Friday. What's your question? How can we help?
Hey, thanks, guys. So I and my co-founder Niranjana are building Chakra, a reproductive health marketplace for females in LGBTQ in Middle India. So we largely have our product in place and our medical network in place, but we are sort of in a bind right now where we're trying to build angel investment to sort of help bring our network an MVP in progress. Essentially, we've tried to found our company in a more mid-tier regional town because that is where our target demographic is 18 to 35 females in the aspirational middle class of India who are essentially earning somewhere between $2,000 to $10,000 a year. And sadly in the Indian market, most of the angel investors and capital that exists is primarily consolidated in a handful of very large metropolitan areas that do not exactly meet our target demographic, who we want to target. So I guess this is more of a general question if there are any founders here who've tried to found companies outside of core traditional entrepreneurial hubs and ways they've gone around to try and build angel investment in regions with essentially much less experience in funding experimental and newer ideas.
I have a little bit with this actually. So where we're based in the UK is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we got our investment from quite far away from us geographically. The way that we did this was, mostly pitching that we were going to address much larger markets that did spread quite wide geographically. So, I wouldn't worry about the physical location of some of those angels. Definitely if you intend to spread your reach, which I assume you probably are.
Yeah, we definitely are planning to expand our reach. We just feel that it's better to essentially dog food us in the kind of markets that we're starting at initially. That way we better understand our customers, and it is cheaper and faster and more efficient for us to prove to investors that we can scale. If we can survive in very in large metros that aren't the primary target for essentially the elite in our area, then we can show that we can expand much easier and much faster. Because the majority of the population does not live in big tier 1 metros like Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore. They live in much smaller towns. And this is similar in the UK and the US as well. Like London is going to have an entirely different market segment compared to someone who's living in Bath or Birmingham.
Sure, yeah, I just meant more so that shouldn't affect angel investments that you're looking for. Because they'll buy into that vision of that you are going to be going everywhere, and this is just like a stepping stone for you that you need to achieve and then kind of move from there. I think that's more what I meant.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we're definitely trying to do that. We're just doing tree traversal through our LinkedIns and our own college networks at UI, UC, and Duke to try and drum up support and try and find that sort of introduction. It is a trial, but it is something which is a great learning experience, because how else do you build companies? You're going to be slapped in the face by adversity all the time.
Yeah, I think YC has quite a large interest in like the geographical locations that you're actually working in as well. So I definitely recommend applying.
Yeah, we are applying to YC's current upcoming batch, but we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. We are trying to build our company irrespective of whether we get into YC or not. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Paul. That's definitely some great advice that we'll definitely try to take into account. Yeah.
Aaron, just if I could just ask Aaron too, like, did you guys? So you guys were with Rematch, were kind of Ohio, started in Cleveland, then invested in, and moved to New York City, and then back to Ohio again. Was like how like in your discussions with Journal Catalyst and any other VCs you were talking to, was a lot of that pressure to move to New York City from the investment side, or do you think you would have not gotten that kind of exposure if you hadn't left to Cleveland?
Kind of unclear on what your question is, but I think exposure to
just because
outside
he
New
was
York.
asking, like, trying to raise VC funds like outside of the outside of Silicon Valley and maybe New York City, you guys having started the company in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, well, everything is different now post COVID, so I think that before, a lot more investors like to stick to their bubble, and that's still largely the case with investors that have a really high opinion of themselves. I'd like to think that a lot more VCs have opened up their borders, though, and have gone outside of their comfort zones. But yeah, some of that pressure definitely came from the investment side, like pre-COVID. I can't imagine it's like that anymore necessarily, but I could be wrong, and other people could have that kind of scenario happen still. Most importantly, though, I think it's just that wherever you're building sets you up for the most success. So as long as that's the case, then you should be okay.
All right, with that, Ching, can we do one more question? Do you have time as the host mod? If not, if you're just muted, that's cool. We'll just try to get to Drew and then wrap it up. Sorry, Peter, we just want to remain
Actually,
as much. What's that?
I was going to say, you can go to Peter. I actually jumped on to add some value to Chidera, but I think he might have bounced. So, but yeah, anyway, happy Friday. Good to see you guys. But yeah, feel free to go to Peter.
Good to see you again, Drew. Peter, let's wrap it up.
Respect, Drew. Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm just interested in your guys' thoughts, I guess, on the other side of this conversation. Before YC, before you guys built anything, did you guys ever reach out to people? Because, just for some background, I reached out to some founders and, they were really helpful. I think we had really productive conversations, but, I have a tendency to hang back. I don't want to push because, they're being really nice. They're going out of their way to help. So how do you, what's your guys' experience, maintaining a dialogue with other founders? I guess that's my question.
Well, I guess I'll answer this. So yeah, I think it's hugely valuable to talk with other founders. And they, I don't think they would get like upset if you annoyed them. They're just going to ignore you basically. And not necessarily even intentionally, because something comes up, they're just going to let something slide. I think it really does kind of speak to the character of each founder. So if a founder is able to tell you like, I have very limited time, here's when I'm available, like happy to talk again, just keep a reasonable string of dialogue going. That's usually fine. And if I don't know, if people can't manage something that simple, probably not speaking too well to them. But if somebody can't lay down kind of like a border, on their time, then they're leaving it to you, I guess, to figure it out, which isn't super fair, in my opinion. So I don't know. I might suggest like looking for different founders at that point to talk to if you're getting, really ambiguous, open-ended stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. Thanks.
Just be careful being a wantrepreneur, right? Like you don't want to just be action oriented. You know what I mean? Like I think one thing that if you can just do your homework on people, I think Twitter is your best friend. Like it's all about finding a commonality. That's how you connect with everybody. But if you're putting energy into like one day I want to have a call with Mark Cuban because he's a billionaire and blah blah blah, like fuck that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not suggesting you're saying that. You're quite contrary to that. But I would say do your homework. I've mentioned before on some of these calls, like handwritten letters are your best friend. So like, what I've realized is in sales and in general, like you're just interrupting people all day long. when you realize that, you take it less personal when people ignore you. So just be persistent, but don't pester, but make sure that you're not just trying to connect with somebody because of your ego, but because you really have a question for them, and ask a question. Like, instead of saying, hey, can I get 30 minutes of your time to talk over coffee or whatever, just ask a question, and then that might lead to other engagement. But I would say Twitter's your best friend, handwritten cards, and be persistent if you really, really want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, there's just a lot of noise out there, so be cognizant of that.
Tyler, I'm really interested with your handwritten cards. What do you do, like, if you don't know, if you're not in the same city, if you don't have like physical interaction with them?
Then you send them a card in the mail, bro. That's how USPS works.
No, I mean, like, what if you don't know their address? Like, how do you get to that point?
Got you. Yeah, that's a great question. So what I do is, I would look up whatever company they're working for, right? Or their company, obviously. And then I would call the number, and I would say something to the extent of like, hey, I really I got a random question for you, Mr. or Mrs. Gatekeeper. I had a great call with Drew, and I wanted to send him a little something in the mail, even if you didn't have a call yet. If I send something to this address, will he show up, or will it get to them? And they'll be like, oh, what address do you have? I'm like, oh, well, I'm looking on Google. And if you don't have an address, be like, oh, I don't have an address. Is there a corporate address I can send it to? I would really appreciate it. That's how you do it. You just pick up the phone. And then what I do is I always look and see, is their LinkedIn page the same as their corporate office city? That's a pretty good sign it's going to get to them. But the funny part is it's like, even if it doesn't get to them, hit them with the, did you get my handwritten note subject line? And if you actually sent them a handwritten note, they're probably going to open that. And I think the key is just asking an explicit question. One hack I'll give people, which is like one of my go-tos, is I figure out what sports team they like, and I go on eBay and I buy a vintage hat for them of that sports team, and I ship it to them. Now, to your point, you got to figure out what the shipping address is, but I just pick up the phone, ask an assistant, and sometimes you can ask, hey, is there somebody that works with Drew that I could speak to? I really wanted to send him a gift, but I wanted to make it special. Who could I talk to? 9 out of 10 times, they're going to tell you to.
That is fire. Follow Tyler.
Tyler, this is why we have Tyler up here. He is the man. All right, guys. Well, with that was another successful huddle. Thank you all for being here. Follow the Startup Club if you're not already. Follow all the mods except for Ben. And
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. Thank you everyone for being here. Really great panel. A lot of great questions. A lot of great mods. As always, thanks, guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Take care.
Peace out, y'all.
See you, Tyler.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.